welcome, welcome. Grab my frothy coffee. Hello, Dafydd'S up in the house. Isn't this exciting? Isn't this great? I'm going to do the traditional Deathly Dark Tours couple of minutes of whiffle before we actually start. We've got a lovely place to start tonight. Can we see ourselves, Desdemona? Are we visible? Fabulous. I'm ably aided and abetted this evening by our camera operator, Desdemona Deathly. Give us a wave, Desdemona. No? Don't give us a wave then. That was a foot wave. That was very athletic. Well done. So we're starting here, actually, aren't we? At, what's the name of the thing? Holyrood Palace. I remembered that all on my own then. We're starting here at Holyrood. Fabulous place to start. We've got a couple of minutes. We've started 2 minutes ago. Oh, goodness me. Standard whiffle, pre-tour whiffle. Get it all out in the open. You can enjoy the full length of a very tired man wearing far too many layers. I thought it'd be really cold tonight. I've got my shirt, I've got my jumper, and I've got my big coat and my gloves on. It was a lot milder than I thought. So there we go. My brave Welsh body. I'm masked up, so I know we get people who are concerned about us keeping to the rules and wearing masks. So we're all masked up. I've got our gel to smother over ourselves to be pure and clean. And hopefully tonight it'll be nice and quiet because Edinburgh is pretty dead at the minute. So we shouldn't have any trouble banter. We should be nice and safe and not have to distance ourselves too much from people. Right, what time are we on, Desdemona? Can't tell. That's fair enough. Can I tell? Huh? 2 minutes after? Oh, that'll do. All right, fab. We'll make a start in that case, shall we? Seeing as it's 32 minutes past, I'll stop whiffling. Right. Welcome, good evening, and hello, and welcome to the Great Edinburgh Ghost Hunt. I'm Dafydd'S, your spooky host, Edinburgh's spookiest Welshman, here to take you on a terrifying tour around the old town of Edinburgh. I'm aided and abetted, as we said at the start, by Desdemona, who's operating the camera this evening. A little introductory wiggle there from Desdemona Deathly. And we've got Dorian, father of the tour, mighty is he, joining us somewhere in the comments and in the chat, so Dorian will be keeping an eye on you all. This is a free event. It's perfectly free to attend, completely free. It's a pay-as-you-feel event, so just like we do here at the Edinburgh Fringe every August. Imagine there's somebody stood at the door with a bucket and a cosh at the end, threatening you with menaces. You don't have to pay anything at all. If you enjoy the tour, feel free to drop something in our PayPal. The link will pop up in the chat. We've got some crackling on the mic, have we? Well, I'll see what I can do. Let's just shift things ever so slightly. Alright, things may get better, things may not get better. A bit of crackling, we'll make sure. Alright, we'll try a little bit of a reposition. We'll try that instead, see if that does anything at all. Splendid. Right, let's make a start. So here's the plan. Like I said, if you think it's all right, the tour, sling us a £5 note in the PayPal. If you think it's the best thing you've ever seen, give us £5,000. If you're Jeff Bezos, give us £5 million. It won't do you any harm. Perfectly fine. So I'll show you the plan. Desdemona, if you give us a little attractive vista of Holyrood, as I explain the plan, we're going to start down here at the bottom of the Royal Mile. And then what we're going to do is we're going to gently walk our way up the Royal Mile. It's quite windy, so there might be a bit of wind noise. Might get the occasional bit of what do you call it? How's your father? Not how's your father, the other thing. And when we're about 3/4 of the way up, we'll give you, our Deathly Dark tourists, the choice of route. We will either go up to the very top of the Royal Mile, or alternatively, we will turn left and go to Greyfriars Kirkyard. But that choice will be yours in a little while, not just yet. So, we're all ready. We're going to make a start. So let me just make sure I've got my notes, because I am the spookiest Welshman in Edinburgh, but I do have a memory like a goldfish in its fading years. So let's mooch on up, shall we? Follow me, Des. Follow me. Oh, goodness. What a day, what a night. It's lovely and quiet. So, the first thing we're going to have to talk about is Holyrood Palace. So Holyrood Palace is this great big lovely lump of a building. You can't see an awful lot of it, unfortunately, tonight. There's quite a lot of darkness. Quite a lot of darkness tonight. But there's been a palace here for at least 500 years, and there is behind it, just over to the left of where Desdemona is there's Holyrood Abbey as well, which is a big old abbey that was, it was a medieval monastery. It's now in ruins, but you can still go and visit it, of course. And the castle is all closed. It's normally lit up, but in 1596, I believe, a woman called Agnes Sampson was brought down here, and she was accused of witchcraft. They couldn't find any... No, they couldn't find any real evidence of witchcraft or of evil doing when they brought Agnes down here. But they stripped her of her outer clothing, they cut off all of her hair, and they looked for the mark of Satan. So she was meant to have some kind of a mark on her body to prove that she was in league with the devil. They didn't find anything, but King James himself decided that she was a witch. He decided that he had enough evidence to prove to him that she was a witch. So she was actually burned at the stake as a witch.
I think the ghosts are interfering with the sound a bit.
Oh, they're probably interfering with the sound. Don't worry too much. So, she was burned at the stake. Ever since then, people have claimed to see Agnes, Bald Agnes as they call her, in Holyrood Palace. They say that she walks around the grounds there, bimbling around there. Just bimbling around, having a stroll, having a bit of a wind, having a bit of a bimbly stroll. So if you're wandering around Holyrood Park in the middle of the night and you see a naked, bald, burned old lady, it could be Agnes Sampson. But call an ambulance anyway, because it might just be somebody who really needs help. Should we cross the road while we can, Desdemona? Let's do that. Oh my God! You take your life in your hands crossing the road in Edinburgh, I tell you that. Right, across the road from Holyrood, the palace, is Holyrood, the Scottish Parliament. This is all brand new. There's nothing particularly spooky about it, except it cost £14 million to build, and the roof leaks whenever it rains. There you go. Just nothing to do with ghosts, just poorly built modern building. There we are. There's a bit of traffic noise, so let's see if we can head up the Royal Mile without too much traffic bothering our audio. Now you've had a treat down in York, because York is relatively flat. In fact, it's a very flat city, built on a plain, but Edinburgh is built on several hills. So, unlike York, we have lots of wind to deal with. So there will be some wind noise. It might make things a little bit crackly. But we have got some beautiful architecture to make up for it. So if you can't hear me, just smile and nod. Smile and nod and enjoy the buildings. Right. So this is the back entrance to the Scottish Parliament. They're locking it so that I can't get in, because they know what I'm like. Hello. Now, the Royal Mile is actually one of the oldest streets in Scotland. There's been a street here for well over 600 years, and it's been used for all sorts of fabulous things, like royal funerals, royal weddings. I think it was King James V came down here for his funeral. Was it King James V? Desdemona it was? Something like that, wasn't it? One of the Jameses. They've had far too many Jameses as kings in Scotland, haven't they? How many have they had? 7? Yeah. They've had 7 Jameses. And 8 if you count the Pretenders. Just call him something else. Call him David. What's wrong with David? It's a perfectly nice name. But lots of interesting things have happened here. But one of the more recent things is the signing of the Act of Union in 1707. Now, in 1707, the Act of Union was signed in Edinburgh that created the UK. So the UK, United Kingdom of Great Britain, didn't exist before 1707. There was no such thing. If you travelled back in time and said, I want to visit the UK, you'd have to visit the Underpants King or something. I don't know what they'd think you were talking about. So, when it was being signed in 1707, just here, in Queensberry House, there was a chap staying called James Douglas, the Mad Earl of Drumlanrig, which is a brilliant name. And poor old James Douglas, at the time, was 10 years old. Mad Earl of Drumlanrig. He was staying in that house, that Queensberry House. It's a lovely old 17th century house. So it's about 400 years old. And he was only about 10 years old at the time. And supposedly on the very night that they were celebrating the signing of the Act of Union, James Douglas broke out from his room. He was under lock and key. He was what they called an imbecile back then, which quite honestly just means he was mentally ill in some way. We don't know what he was. Some people have claimed that he's a violent psychopath or had some kind of sociopathic problem. We don't know. But back then, if you had any sort of mental illness that made you violent or gave you learning disabilities or problems like that, they call you an imbecile or an idiot. It's very unpleasant. And he cooked and ate the kitchen boy. Stabbed a kitchen boy, shoved him onto a spit, roasted him, and when everybody came home, after their kebabs and their celebrating and their pints, they found James Douglas, the Earl of Drumlanrig, had eaten a servant boy. So after that, he was sent off to an isolated place. He was kept in the attic of an isolated house, and he died about 15 years later. He was only young, bless him. He was only in his 20s, but they say that the kitchen boy still haunts Queensberry House. You can still see this poor little kitchen boy, this little waif, standing, looking glum in the old kitchen if you walk around. I'd look glum as well if I'd been gnawed on by a 10-year-old child. I'd be more angry that a 10-year-old child had got the best out of me, to be honest with you, rather than anything else. Right, let's continue up the Royal Mile. You don't have to go backwards, Desdemona, don't worry. All right, Spielberg. We're getting all the cinematic shots tonight. It's good, this, isn't it? So we're going to carry on up the Royal Mile, which now, of course, is the big tourist street, isn't it? It's the street that everybody comes up to buy their tartan. Everyone comes here to buy their tartan and their fudge, whatever people buy. Tourist paraphernalia. I'll let these real people go past. Yeah. But it's a very old street. We've just found a lovely lintel above a door. It says 1619 Nisi Domins Frustra. Blessed be God in all his gifts. Isn't that lovely? Isn't that nice? Isn't that lovely? There you go. You get lots of those in Edinburgh. There's quite a lot of really old buildings in Edinburgh. Some of the buildings on the mile go back 400-500 years. But a lot of them have got more modern buildings sort of built on top of them and in front of them. So there's really old buildings here. They're just hidden inside newer buildings. This isn't particularly old. This is Milton House Public School. I always think there's something creepy about a school that's closed, don't you? I find there's something weird, something spooky about a dark Victorian schoolhouse. I don't know. I always think there's something that's not quite right. Like you might go in the middle of the night and suddenly hear a child laughing, you know, something like that. I was always a bit spooked when I had detention at school. Not that I ever got detention at school, of course. I'd have to walk around through this Victorian school that I was in all on my own and get to the big creaky door to get out of the school. I always was too scared to look in the dark corners, like the dark corners, the playground there. I was too scared, just in case the spooks got me. But yeah, 500, 400, 300, 200 even years ago, the Royal Mile wasn't called the Royal Mile. The name Royal Mile wasn't actually used to describe this street until the 19th century, until the late 1800s. And Before that, it was several different streets. So you can see one of the streets there is the Cannon Gate. So not because of guns or anything like that. It's cannon like a cannon in a church. But we've got different street names here. We've got 3 different streets, really. We've got Castle Hill, the High Street, and we've got the Cannon Gate. So we're on the Cannon Gate at the moment. Lovely old Victorian pillar box there. Very nice, very tasty, very tasteful. Oh, we're just going past the Starbucks. Do you want anything, Desdemona? Yeah? I'll get you a chai latte. Yeah, I know what to get. We're nearly at our next little stop. Our next little stop's just here. So we're coming up to the Canongate Church, and we've got some lovely historical things to look at the Canongate. So the first thing, I'll try and see it as best we can. Let's see if I can use my spare phone's torch to light it up a little bit. See what we can do. I'll swiftly go over the road. Oh Lord have mercy, there's a bus! Okay. Is that doing anything at all? It's not really, is it? But there, oh God, there's a bus. Before this number 35 completely cuts me off. Go on, Des. Go on, Des. Yes, lad. So there, can you see it? You can actually see it, actually. You can see it, can't you? Oh, that's fine. You don't even, do you need my torch? Is that doing anything whatsoever? No. All right. Balls. Never mind then. So that is the original market cross. That's a Canongate market cross, or Mercat cross. In Scotland, you'll see it written M-E-R-C-A-T, Mercat. And that's quite simply because that's the Scots way of saying market, Mercat. We'll go to the supermarket. We're doing the supermarket. But this is the original market cross from the 1100s. This is from, I think, 1138 or 1128. So that is more than 900 years old. That is nearly 900 years old. I'm good at maths. I'm an artiste. Leave me alone. I'm a spookologist, not a math. Damn it, Jim. I'm a spookologist, not a doctor. So this is the market cross. So this is where people would come and gather on market day for the Canongate. Not for Edinburgh, not for the whole of the town, just for this part of the street, of this street. So it's sort of a little local reminder that there's been marketplaces and people living and working and buying and selling things here for mercy, for 900 years. And this is the church itself, the Canongate Church. Now, in 1645 to 1647, there was a horrible outbreak of the Black Death in Edinburgh. Half of the city died. Tens of thousands of people were killed by the Black Death, the bubonic, the pneumonic, and the septicemic plagues. So the bubonic plague is the one that gives you all the horrible sores, makes you strap 2 dead pigeons to your armpits and see me tomorrow. The pneumonic plague goes for your lungs, turns your lungs into rice pudding, basically. And the septicemic plague is basically attacking your bloodstream and your brain and your heart. And apparently, if you got the bubonic plague, you had a 90% chance of dying. If you got the pneumonic plague, you had a 95% chance of dying, or thereabouts. And if you got the septicemic plague, it was 100% death rate. So everybody who contracted the septicemic plague apparently died, which is horrific. Right, you're nearly falling into the street there, Des. Come on, let's scoot on up. But the thing that you see in some of the churchyards, if you come up to Edinburgh and you ever come up, you see some of these signs in some of the graveyards telling you all the famous people that are buried in them. So who have we got here? We've got Robert Keith, Bishop of Fife. That's nice. Never heard of him. John Frederick Lamp, bassoon player. Bassoon! Who else have we got? George Chalmers, he founded a hospital. We've got loads of interesting people. Robert Ferguson, a poet. I'm not sure these count as celebrities. It says celebrity. Who?
Adam Smith.
Adam Smith. Oh, is he buried here? Oh, he is, of course he is. Yeah, Adam Smith. All right, Adam Smith counts as a celebrity. That's fine. I'll give that one, but I don't know. So there we go. That's our first little church. Not the last church, though. Over the road is the Museum of Edinburgh. I don't think there's anything spooky about the Museum of Edinburgh. I think it's just a really good museum. We went there once, didn't we, Des? We went to the Museum of Edinburgh. 20 minutes. Doing well. Right. So this big, fun-looking thing here is the Canongate toll booth. And this has been here since the 1500s. So this has been here nearly 500 years. And although it's called a toll booth, it's not just you go in there, you pay your toll, you get to use the road. It was actually a government building, so it was the administrative centre for the Canongate, for this bit outside of the city walls, as we'll see. So this place was where you would come, you would pay taxes here, you'd get permission to sell things at the market, at the cross just there. You would pay your toll to be allowed in and out of the city, but it was a government building. So if you go to Scotland, to an old city, and there's a toll booth, it's not just a place where you pay your toll to use the road. Shall we cross and get a better view of it? Should be on the other side of the road, really, shouldn't we? So we can actually see these buildings that I'm talking about. Now, we've got spooks and ghoulies and things, but this is also a historic tour, because I love me a bit of history, so we've got ghouls and spooks and bloody murder just coming up. And there's the toll booth. It's all very magnificent. That clock's pretty new. That clock's only about 100 years old, but the booth, the tavern next to it, is actually older than the clock. There's been a pub there for 201 years. Delightful. You've only been able to get the Princess Diana Memorial Tartan for about 5 years, though. That's a lot newer than the pub. So if we trundle our way up here, we've got a lot more lights. Oh, we could get a deep-fried Mars bar. Should we get a deep-fried Mars bar? We'll go to Benny's and get a deep-fried Mars bar, the absolute classic. If you've never had a deep-fried Mars bar, let me tell you, you've probably got less chance of dying of a heart attack. They're quite tasty, though. Have you had one, Des? Yeah, they're good, aren't they? They're surprisingly good. There's a place in York that does deep-fried cream eggs. They're delicious. Highly recommend. So this block of houses here, one of the houses, the one painted red, funnily enough, burnt down in the 1620s. And everybody managed to escape except for a little girl. Get your mask on. We've got a few people coming, so I'm just going to pop my mask on. A little girl, very tragically, died in the fire. Now, this little girl was the only victim of this fire. And it's said that after this particular building burnt down, the little girl's face was seen in the windows of this one just here, this building next to us. She's a bit newer, 1670s. And as soon as the face of the little girl was seen, the homeowner took all of his valuables out and got out of the building. And that night, the building caught fire. A stray spark from one of the hearths on the second floor. So that little girl warned him that his house was going to burn down. So they say on the Royal Mile, if you see the face of a little girl, sad little girl, wearing old-fashioned clothes, peering out at you from any of the windows, it means that house is going to burn down in 24 hours. So there you go. Keep your eyes peeled, just in case. A lot of traffic tonight. Goodness me, it's very busy. Hasn't been this busy on the Royal Mile for months. There's lots of spooky, strange goings-on the Royal Mile. Lots of weirdness. One of the most reported paranormal, what should we call it, phenomena that people say they see up the Royal Mile is a black carriage pulled by fire-breathing horses. Now, apparently, if you see this black carriage, you'll die. It's like Piccadilly Circus here tonight, isn't it? It's awful. But apparently, if you see this black carriage, you'll die, and it's a warning to get your affairs in order before the black carriage comes to take you to judgment. Lots of preachers, lots of Protestant preachers told people not to believe this sort of foolishness, this, what do you call it, superstition, but who knows, it survived as a story. People still talk about seeing it in the pubs here, so maybe there is something to it after all. Who knows? Who knows? They do say that if you're a sinner and you walk down the Royal Mile, you might see a green devil of Canongate, who's meant to appear before you. And you can offer him a silver shilling or a silver sixpence and he'll go away. Probably linked to the story of Judas in the Bible, I would imagine. Where is it? There it is. So, right. Have a look at the cross of St. Thingamadoodle, St. John. So, this is actually the boundary between the Canongate and the borough of Edinburgh. So the city of Edinburgh stops here and the Canongate starts there. But it was also supposedly the site of a temple. So the Order of the Cross, the Order of the Knights of St. John, the Knights Templar, supposedly had land, property around here. And they had land all over Europe. They were a huge property-owning order. They weren't just Da Vinci Code and secret codes and treasure underneath Rosslyn Chapel and that sort of thing. They were also a genuine order of monks, and they had huge amounts of property. And there's actually a temple church just behind this block here, but there's a little plaque to show you about it there. But the temple church is much, much newer. It's a much newer church, but supposedly there was a temple church here. There's a temple church in London. Is it on Westminster Abbey? Is it by Westminster Abbey? Somewhere around there. There's a temple church, but that's the Knights Templar. Of course, they were all burnt at the stake by the Pope in, when was it? Was it the 13th century? End of the 13th century, I think? Start of the 14th century? On Friday the 13th. So that's why Friday the 13th is bad luck, but only if you're a member of the Knights Templar and the Pope doesn't like you. Otherwise, you'll be absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. Pope loves me. Big fan of mine. Frankie babe. Still Francis, isn't it? We've still got Francis, okay. I might have had another one by now, you never know. Can't tell. Oh, goodness me. The Royal Mile is taking us a while to walk up it. It is a mile long, so, you know, fair play. And it's all uphill. Should have started at the top, shouldn't we, really? Could have rolled down. Freewheeled. Oh. I think we're doing quite nicely so far. We're coming up to one of the big crossroads here. This crossroads is actually where the city wall ended. So where that cross was on the road that we just passed there is where the borough stopped, where the city stopped. So there was this kind of demilitarised zone between the city wall and Canongate. So although this is all just Edinburgh now, this is all Edinburgh, 400 or 500 years ago, this was two separate towns. None of these buildings would have been here, so it would have been, well, not many of these buildings would have been here, so it would have been like going from one village to the next, really. One of the things we've got lots of in Edinburgh, these little police boxes, so they're like the TARDIS. They're like the police boxes that you see in other places, but lots of them have been turned into cafes, and this one's a lovely little coffee shop. You can get beef hot dogs for £4. It's quite a lot for a hot dog. You used to be able to get a hot dog from my local swimming pool for £1.25, but they refused to tell you what kind of meat was in it, so get what you pay for. Right, here we go. Welcome to the world's end. End of the world. Why is it called the world's end? It's called the world's end because this is where the old city wall ran, just across this block here that we're looking at. That was where the city wall was. In fact, sort of behind Des down there are the remains of the city wall. They go further out. But this bit's all been demolished. So this is called the world's end because it's the end of the city. This is the last safe bit of the city before you're outside the walls in no man's land, in the DMZ. So the pub's called the End of the World. It's a nice little pub. It is supposedly haunted, but this whole area is supposed to be haunted by a murder victim, a woman who was killed just there. Nope, just there, on St. Mary's Street. I was like, that's Jeffrey Street. Just there, just by the little blue box. A woman was murdered there in 1916 at the height of the First World War. A woman was murdered there in the dead of night. The screams were heard all around here. Landlord of the World's End came rushing out and found a woman covered in blood. Her skirt and her shirt waist were drenched in blood. No one was ever found. Nobody was ever charged for the murder, but she's seen every now and then. I don't need my notes in my hand all the time, do I? She's seen every now and then this woman wearing Edwardian clothes with sort of her hair all done up, big hat, covered in blood, just standing at the corner of St. Mary's Street there, usually by drunks, but occasionally by people who are stone cold sober and swear that they've seen her. But that's the tale of St. Mary's murder. So if you're here in the middle of the night, you see a woman in Edwardian clothes, it could be her. Should we take a chance, Desdemona? What do you think? Yeah? Today's a good day to die, isn't it? Oh my God! Oh no, I've got the green man, never mind. Well, that was very dramatic for about 3 seconds. There we go. But alas, it's all closed. The pubs are all closed. All gone. All gone. See, ordinarily what I'd like to do is take you all in for a swift half to warm up halfway through our tour, but can't do that tonight, alas. World's End close. Edinburgh being dramatic. World's End is close. World's End close, boys and girls. World's End close. All right, Edinburgh, calm down. Take it easy. So, the close thing. Let's talk about the close thing, because we've got Baron Maul's close. No relation to Darth Maul from episode 1. We got Fountain Close here. Tweeddale Close, we just went past there. So the close thing, let's do the close thing. So closes in Edinburgh, in any other city, might be called a snickleway or a ginnel or an alleyway. And they're alleyways. They're side streets. Some of them are covered, some of them are open, some of them are formed where 2 buildings have a second story built that goes over the top of the alleyway. Some of them are open, like the one across the road there. This one's one of those that's closed, so you've got a roof. And they're all over the place. They're absolutely all over the shop here. Edinburgh's filled with closes. South Grey's close, there's another one. They're absolutely everywhere in the old town, and you don't see them in the new town. We do have a new town and a body snatchers and a Burke and Hare related route. That's not the one we're on tonight, but that is something if you're interested in. Keep your eyes peeled for that being advertised. So, Paisley Close is over there as well now. Paisley Close, which is just that close over there. You can see there's a little castle window. See that castle window, Des? Just over there. Now that window is the front room of a flat where there was a piano teacher who lived there. All of her students got very upset because whenever they were practicing their scales, the child in the room above would jump off their bed and start running around the bedroom like mad. And eventually they started telling her, well, we can't practice our scales, we can't play the piano with kids running up and down, can you tell them to shut up? And the piano teacher's face went ash pale and she said, the little girl and the little boy who lived up there drowned in the canal 20 years ago. So that little castellated room, the room above it, is meant to be haunted by these poor little children who drowned in the canal over by Fountain Bridge. They were playing by the canal. So that's a very recent story. Somebody told me that they'd had a piano lesson there last year and that they'd heard the very same thing. So we don't know how old this ghost story is, no idea at all, but that building is about 250 years old originally, so it could be very old. It could be a very long time that those 2 poor little children have been running around up there. We don't know. I don't make any judgment calls with these ghost stories. Personally, I've had some spooky feelings around Edinburgh, but make no judgments either way. Blackfriars Street. It's all closed. Everything's meant to be really busy, and it's really weird. Just a reminder, we are in the capital of Scotland right now. We're in Scotland's capital city, and it's just dead. It's crazy. Now the Mitre, this pub on the right here, this lovely, well-lit pub, mercifully well-lit pub, the Mitre has a haunted cellar. Now, that pub's been there for about 150 years. Just before the First World War in about 1908, a drayman fell down the stairs into the cellar, broke his neck and died. Drayman, if you're not sure what a drayman is, it's the person who takes the wagon full of beer barrels from pub to pub from the brewery. That's the dray, is the wagon that you carry the beer on. And this drayman fell down the stairs into the cellar, broke his neck, and he's been seen there ever since. All of the pub landlords that have worked there since, and most of the managers and bar staff have seen this man sitting on a barrel in the corner of the cellar. And apparently he's just perfectly happy in a cellar, dying in the cellar. Maybe he gets his satisfaction from seeing people tapping casks and enjoying themselves upstairs. Who knows? But he seems perfectly happy. He's never caused any damage. He's never caused any harm to anybody. He just sits on his barrel, chilling out, having a little rest. Oh, we're going to cross South Bridge now, so it might get a bit loud. But where we are now, if we look to the right down this next street, we'll be looking into the new town, right? So the new town was built at the end of the 1700s so that the rich people who lived in Edinburgh could get away from the stink, because there was poo in the streets and it was generally an horrible place to live. So the knobs and the toffs and the rich people literally had another town built for them to move to. So if we look down here, there's the new town. See the top of the railway hotel? That's meant to have a telephone that rings in one of the broom cupboards, one of the broom closets, in the middle of the night, disturbing the people in the room next door. So these people will be fast asleep in their posh hotel bed. They'll hear a telephone ringing and ringing and ringing, and no one will pick it up. They'll ring reception and say, "Can you tell the person in the next room that that telephone's really disturbing me, and can they pick it up, please?" The receptionist will say there hasn't been a telephone in that room for 25 years. There's no telephone in the broom closet. Why would there be? Down the other side of us, as we cross, that's South Bridge. It's a bridge south of North Bridge, as you might have gathered. Now, South Bridge is one of the big roads through Edinburgh. It's quite busy, so we'll stop here for a sec. But South Bridge is home to the Festival Theatre. Now, the original Festival Theatre burnt down in 1911, killing 8 people, including the most highly paid celebrity at the time in the world. There's a magician called Herr Neuberger. His stage name was the Great Lafayette. He died in the fire because he got out of the fire and then decided to go back into the stables to rescue his horse, and he burnt to death, the pillock. Now, the great thing about him is, a couple of weeks before, he'd buried his dog. He'd bought a grave plot for himself in the north of Edinburgh for his dog. I think it was called Princess or Diamond, something like that. And they allowed him to bury his dog in the graveyard on the proviso that he would be buried there within 12 months. And 2 weeks later, he died in a fire. There's a pedestrian crossing there for a street that is closed, so that's fun. So that is Herr Neuberger, the Great Lafayette. He has been seen there numerous times in the dressing room and in the royal box, so the very posh seats. I mean, why not? If you're a ghost, you've been burnt to death in a fire, I'd go for the royal box as well, personally. Why not? Treat yourself. Try and get away from that alarm. It's quite alarming, isn't it? This is the Tron Church. So this is an old church. It's not a church anymore. It's a market now. They sell sort of indie art and that sort of thing there. But you'll see a lot of places in Scotland called the Tron Church, Tron Square in Glasgow, and the Tron Theatre. The Tron was actually the market way beam. So you know in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where they stick the witch on the big weigh beam and they weigh her against the duck. That's a tron, big weighing arm that you use for weights and measures in the market. And this is Hunter Square, so this was a marketplace as well, which is the Market Square, the Market Cross, for the Market Church. So this is one of the markets for the city of Edinburgh. There's loads of markets in Edinburgh, bloody loads of markets. Can't move for markets in Edinburgh. There's nothing to do but shop. That's actually very close to the truth. There's another Starbucks. Do you want another chai latte? Oh, yeah, I'll have another one. We're nearing the top of the Royal Mile. Thank God. We're nearing-ish the top of the Royal Mile. So this is kind of the slightly... I always think of this as the slightly nicer bit of the mile. I don't know why. I think it's because it's so much wider and it's pedestrianised. So when the Edinburgh Fringe is on for the whole of August, this is where all the street performers come. And there'll be one person eating fire or juggling puppies on a unicycle or whatever, paint themselves pink, whatever they do. And then there'll be 1,000 people taking up the rest of the street, so you can't move. But the chippy here does a roaring trade. Somewhere else you can get your Princess Diana Memorial Tartan. Right. Oh, it's a good dog. It's a very good woof. Yes, excellent woof. Lots of good woofs in Edinburgh. Right, this thing here, Desdemona knows what this is. You know what this is, don't you? What is it? I tell him. All right, well, I've got the microphone on, haven't I? So this is a wellhead. It's got a big sad face on it. It's got a sad mask. Come and show them the sad mask. It's got a sad... Oh, hang on, let me chuck the cigarette off it first. Yeah. Right, Corona. So it's got a sad mask on one side, and on the other side, it's got a glad mask. So it's got the tragedy and comedy masks of Greek theatre. This is a wellhead, so this is a public drinking fountain, effectively. This is where you get your water from. So before there was actually indoor plumbing to all of these buildings and all of these flats, you would come out with a bucket or a pail or whatever you needed to fill. You'd come here, you'd pump the water, and you'd take it back upstairs. And this was where you got all of your fresh water from. And most of the fresh water in Edinburgh was actually piped into these in wooden pipes. So they used wooden water pipes that kind of... It's not tongue and groove, is it? What would you call it? Like a socket. It's sort of like a socket. Do you remember those felt tip pens you used to be able to get where you could stick all the little felt tip pens into each other? Is that just me? Fair enough. Let's have a little bit more of my coffee, shall I? Anyway, that's what the water pipes were like. But that was in the 18th century they were using that. In the 19th century they modernised an awful lot of the city. I actually think it's absolutely astonishing. All of these buildings have all of those bathrooms and sinks and kitchens. They've all got fresh drinking water piped into them. I think that's absolutely astonishing. Right. So we're at the site of another market cross, which is just here. And this is a really important one. This is where the market cross was. Spooky. In the 16th and 17th centuries. This here that I'm stood on, this was the site of the market cross. That's the market cross now. He's not camera shy, don't worry, it's fine. There you go. That's fine, yeah. Be in shot. There you go. So,
What was it over here, sorry?
the market cross.
I'm from Glasgow, so
Oh, yeah?
I don't really know what it is.
You know the Tron Square in Glasgow, don't you? The Tron.
It's drawn, yeah?
Yeah. Do you know what a Tron is?
No.
That is a market way beam.
Right, so tell me
It's
the
a-
history here. Let's walk through this.
There you go. So, it's a free to attend, you see? You're free to attend. So, the market cross there, that was where the market was, but this is where they hanged people. They would hang people here at the market cross. They would bring them here from the old prison. There was a prison just up there. They'd bring them down here and they'd execute them publicly. Nice bit of uplifting history for a Monday night, eh?
Yeah,
Nice and bright for you. Let's trundle up here.
Let's continue. I'll continue my piece. Let's go.
Help yourself.
So where you take me now?
We're going up here to the new market cross. This one's only about 110 years old.
So I've walked down here.
Very new.
Where we go here? There's a bit more history here.
There's history everywhere. There's history all over the place.
I'm just joined in. I don't know what's happening here, but I'm just joined in.
Don't worry about it.
I'm joined in. Fuck it. I'm from Glasgow. I'm used to it, so I'm used to a lot of stuff.
used to different stuff. So this is the Newmarket Cross. This was only built in the 1890s to replace the old one. They didn't hang anybody at this market cross. Nobody's ever been hanged here. But this was the site of most of the executions in Edinburgh after 1785. There was a prison just here, just where that lady is walking there. There was a prison that took up about half of the street here. And that was called the Toll Booth Prison. There was another toll booth here, exactly the same as the one we looked at down there. But this one was a notorious prison. So notorious that it was written about by Walter Scott. He called it the Heart of Midlothian, which is why the football club is called Hearts of Midlothian. That's true. That's absolutely true. So let me find the quote about the Heart of Midlothian. It'd help if I was reading my notebook the right way around, wouldn't it? So the jail was... Well, I can't find my quote. Never mind. Forget the notes. So the jail was so disgusting, apparently, according to one 18th century writer, what they'd done was they took the toll booth and they just threw people into the rooms in it. They didn't turn it into a prison. They didn't do anything to it to make it a jail. They just chucked people in the rooms. There was no toilet, no indoor plumbing, no drainage. If you needed to do your number twos, you just did it in a bucket and threw it into a hole that was backed up. It was meant to go down to the drainage system, but it didn't work, so it was always backed up, so it stank. People died in there. They died of cholera. They died of dysentery. They died of all sorts of horrible things. Then in 1785, they built a gallows on it so that they could hang people there without having to drag them the, 100 feet to the market cross? They couldn't even be bothered doing that. So to be more efficient, they stuck a gallows on top of the prison and they hanged people there in public. It's completely gone now, but we're going to go and have a look at the outline of it. And we're going to let this gentleman carry on down the mile because we're forcing him up the mile when we're scooting our way up. Huh? No, all right, fair, jump.
Let's see what it's going to be.
Jump on.
I'll go now.
Absolutely.
What's that here?
So what we're walking past here is St. Giles's High Kirk. Everyone calls it a cathedral. It's not technically a cathedral, it's a high kirk. It's not a cathedral. It's always been a church. So this church, it's not that old, really, honestly, really and truly. It's not that old. It's only about 650, 700 years old, which isn't that old for Britain. But on the floor here, see these gold bricks? Oh my God, I just found 12 bricks. So this is the outline of the Toll Booth prison. This is where the jail was, along here. So they say it's haunted by people that were hanged here. There's supposedly, if you're staying in any of those buildings over there, you'll hear the sound of a trap door opening for when people are hanged and they drop them down. But they never had a trapdoor mechanism at the Toll Booth prison. They kicked a stool out from underneath their feet. So they're hearing somebody getting hanged using a long drop, but I don't know who it is. But the cathedral's got its own little secrets as well, because behind St. Giles's, there's more walking involved, don't you worry about it. There's plenty of exercise. You'll get your 10,000 steps with me, I tell you that. Whew. Crikey. Here we go. We're going to scoot. I'm definitively on the wrong side of this chain. Oh well, never mind. Whoops. So, this whole big empty area here. Big old empty area. Parliament Square. At the back of it there's the old Parliament buildings. So that was the seat of the Scottish government. That is where the Parliament met, okay? Over there. Over there. Over there. That one there. Not down there. Over there. Before they built that, before 1562, this was the main graveyard for the city of Edinburgh. This here, this whole area behind us here, all of that full of corpses. More than 30,000 dead bodies were buried there. More than 30,000. Lots of dead people. There's a car there. In 1645 to 47, they had to use this space as an extra burial ground because so many people were dying of the plague. Because so many people were dying of the plague in Edinburgh in the 1640s, they had to reuse this area here.
Don't spit on it.
I'm going to tell them. I'm going to tell them. Because so many people were dying of the plague. There was trouble banter after all. There you go. So there you go. Right. Come and zoom in over here, Des. Right. On the floor there, you can see a bum. But that's because you're looking at it from this end. If you look at it from that end, it's a heart. There you go. So that is the heart of Midlothian. Walter Scott called the prison here, the Tolbooth prison, the heart of Midlothian. It's a tradition that every time a resident of Edinburgh walks past, they spit on it. You're meant to spit on the heart. We're not going to do it tonight, obviously. COVID. Don't do that. Bad for you. We've picked up a Celtic fan, so it doesn't really matter anyway. But you're meant to spit on it as a sign of disdain for the prison and the horrible conditions that they forced people, the people of Edinburgh, to live in the prison. That's a real thing. That's an actual thing. There you go. Little thing. That's why it's nothing to do with football. Everyone thinks that you spit on it because you hate Hearts. It's nothing to do with hating Hearts. Nothing to do with that at all. It's all to do with the prison. So, that is the heart of Midlothian. There we go. John Knox. Oh yeah, John Knox is buried over there, isn't he?
John Knox?
Yeah, John Knox, the well, basically the leader of the Scottish Reformation, wasn't he? Effectively.
For God's sake.
He is buried. There's a grave marker to him just over there. John Knox is buried.
Black Horus.
Where that traffic cone. Effectively, where that traffic cone is the biggest graveyard in Edinburgh.
That is crazy.
Right. So there we go. Right, what time are we on? I'm going to check. Oh, beautiful timing. Beautiful timing. It's nearly past. Right. How was that for you?
I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah? Well,
I'm from Glasgow. I've not experienced this before. I've been to Edinburgh, but I want to experience more.
Fabulous, fabulous.
If that can happen.
It can happen because we're going to be doing more of these tours. Deathly Dark tours. I'm Dafydd'S Deathly, and this is the Deathly Dark tour. So go tell your friends. I'm going to have an awful lot more of these, all right? Fabulous. And there you go, guys. So that's our wonderful little tour. We'll let you go. Thank you very much for... What's your name?
Jordan.
John. Thank you very much, John, for joining us. Take a bow. You've been as much of a star of this show as we have. We'll let you get on your merry way, and I will tell you guys how you can help us for the next one. So thank you very much, Jordan. I'll see you next time. We haven't finished. I'm just trying to get rid of him. Don't worry. We haven't finished. He was just swearing a lot, and I needed to get rid of him. So there we go. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about, boys and girls, and those who fit neither description, of course, is Deacon Brodie. There's a pub over there called Deacon Brodie's Tavern. Have you noticed that most of my landmarks are pubs? That tells you a great deal about them. William Brodie was a well-respected cabinet maker. In 18th century Edinburgh. Now, he was also the deacon of the Incorporation of Wrights and Masons. Now, he wasn't a deacon of a church. He wasn't a clergyman at all. So deacon doesn't mean that he was a preacher or a priest of any kind. The deacon at that point was basically the union rep. So he was effectively the head of the guild, the Incorporation of Wrights and Masons for the borough of Edinburgh. So you remember we had Canongate down there? We're now in the borough of Edinburgh. We are in the city, the royal borough of Edinburgh. William Brodie was born in 1741. He was a well-respected man about town. He was very wealthy. He was very well known. He had a wife and children. He also had 2 mistresses and 8 illegitimate children. He was a gambler. He was a drinker, and he was the head of an armed gang. My kind of man. Now, in 1788, they took a step too far because they tried to make an armed raid on one of the excise houses. So customs and excise, basically where you get all of the customs and the tax duty on import and export stuff. Deacon Brodie and a gang of his mates, with guns and swords, went to the excise house, tried to rob it, and they were caught by the militia. So Edinburgh City militia, bunch of hard nutters with guns and halberds, managed to catch most of the gang. William Brodie escaped to Amsterdam, where he was arrested by agents of the crown who chased him to Amsterdam by ship, by sailing ship, brought him back. Two of his co-conspirators turned king's evidence, so they got immunity for giving evidence. They were probably transported to Australia instead of being executed. And William Brodie, in 1788, was hanged here, where I'm standing. He was executed here. The supreme irony is that he was hanged on a gallows that he designed and built the year before. So he told the crowd that he was being hanged on the most efficient gallows the world had yet seen, and that he held the patent for it. Now, he was wearing an iron collar round his neck. He actually bribed the hangman to ignore the fact he was wearing an iron collar, but it didn't work. The collar was too thin. So he did actually die. The collar made it worse. It actually made it worse, made it more difficult for him to breathe, and he died after about 15 minutes. They kept him up there for a full 15 minutes. They cut him down, and he died very, very slowly. Now, supposedly, if you live on the Royal Mile, on the ground floor, you may hear a knocking on your window in the middle of the night. If you look outside, you'll see a man wearing a dark hat, big coat, carrying a dark lantern, knocking on windows to see if there's anybody in. And that's meant to be the ghost of Deacon Brodie looking for his next victim. Now, it's your turn to decide what we do now. So tell us in the chat if you want us to go up towards the castle and the wind, or if you want us to go down towards Greyfriars Bobby and the most haunted graveyard in the world. So up or down? Up for the castle, down towards Greyfriars. What are we getting in the chat? Anything yet? It's probably a 5.
There's been a lot of Greyfriars.
A lot of Greyfriars.
Mm-hmm.
I think the decision's been made, don't you,
Yeah,
shall we?
A couple of castles, but a lot
A couple of
Greyfriars.
castles. Well, we're going to try and do both, so we'll...
Bobby and Kirkyard.
Bobby and Kirkyard. Lol. We'll try and zoom a little bit, because I'm aware of the time. Oh, believe you me, I'm aware of the time. So, we're going down George IV Bridge, named after King George IV, son of Mad King George, George III. Might have seen the film, The Madness of King George. Madness of King George III. And George IV actually did visit Edinburgh, as far as I'm aware. He visited the place once for about 3 days. They decorated the whole town. There was tartan everywhere, bagpipes playing, all sorts of things. He stayed for a couple of days and then he wombled off. Now, on the right here is Victoria Street. So this is supposedly, this is the street that inspired Diagon Alley in the Harry Potter books. If you look down, it's very attractive. It's covered in scaffolding at the minute, but this is also called the West Bow. Now, in the, I think in about the 1690s, a chap living down here was a major in the army, and almost on his deathbed, at the age of about 65, 70, he confessed that he'd been engaged in inappropriate relations with his sister. He was arrested, his sister admitted to this as well, and then they both confessed to practicing black magic and witchcraft. So of course they were burnt at the stake. In England, witches were hanged. In Scotland, they were burned at the stake. A lot of people think that all witches were burned at the stake, but nope, down in England they were usually hanged, and in Wales as well. Best country in the world. So he was burned at the stake up on Castle Hill, up by the castle. His house, see those lights? There are two, sort of one big bright light and then a row of slightly less bright lights just out. I'll try and get my finger there. So his house was about there. It's not there anymore, it's been demolished, but his house was about there until the 1770s. Now he's called the Wizard of West Bow, because this is the West Bow. It's only been Victoria Street since Queen Victoria. And when they were burning him at the stake, they took his walking stick, his wizard's staff. I wouldn't rob an old man of his walking stick. And they threw it on the bonfire with him. They threw it on this fire with the Wizard of West Bow. And the story goes that the walking stick, when it was thrown on the fire, instead of burning, made a whistling shriek. And then with a pop, it jumped off the fire, bounced down the road, and was never seen again. I like to think that it's like the littlest hobo. It's just off having adventures, just with its pack on its back, just bouncing down the road, encouraging people to commit heinous acts. So George IV Bridge, it's called that because it's a bridge. As you can see, we are, about 100 feet above the ground right now. And that plays merry hell with your Google Maps. Turn left here. All right, I will. That's the Cowgate down there. It's a very famous street. It's like Gotham City when you're down there looking up at all these huge grey buildings, black buildings, but it's really dramatic. It goes underneath there. So Edinburgh's all these layers. Some of these buildings, 500 years ago, they were 6 or 7 stories tall. And that's why you get things like the vaults. So underneath us right now, there are vaults. There are arched chambers underneath all of these streets. And there are tours, you can go on ghost tours of these vaults. And we would take you down there, except you can't get 4G down there. So we can't do a live stream in the vaults, I'm afraid. But there are at least 9 ghosts in those vaults. One of them is a little boy called Jack. He's often heard just pitter-pattering around. There's a happy cobbler of Vault 5. He's a happy cobbler. He's literally, people have gone down there and they've just asked him who he is. And he just said, I'm a cobbler. My name's John, I'm a cobbler. How are you? Very well, thank you, how are you? And he just has conversations with people. So he's a perfectly happy dude, this cobbler. It's the Edinburgh Elephant Cafe, apparently where that woman wrote that book about that wizard. The Worst Witch, that's the one. What other ghosts have they got down in the vaults? There's a woman in black, of course. And there's also a chap called Mr. Boots. Now, nobody knows very much about Mr. Boots. He's also meant to haunt the pub called Whistle Binkies, best pub name in the world, on Nidri Street. And all we know about Mr. Boots is that he is a gentleman wearing riding boots who stands and watches people. That's all we know. That's all he does. Just stares at people. And somehow I find that very distressing. Oh, cheeky Nando's. So down there is Chambers Street. On the corner there is Nando's. So Chambers Street's a very important street. That is where the Magistrates' Court is. And this huge, great big thing here, all of this, basically everything on that side of the street that you can see, all of that is the National Museum of Scotland. Fantastic place, free to go into. Thank you very much, National Museums Act 2001. Awesome, awesome place. One of the creepiest things in there is the Maiden. So the Maiden is Scotland's answer to the guillotine. At least 1,000 people were executed by the Maiden on Chambers Street down there, and it operates exactly the same way as a guillotine, basically. It's just a blade that goes ka-chunk, chops off your head, and it's in there. And there's also 17 miniature coffins about this big in there that were found on Arthur's Seat, which is a hill just outside the city, about that big. Inside every one of those coffins is a little wooden doll. They were found in 1838 in a cave. Nobody knows what they're for. They've had paranormal investigators in to see if they could figure out if they've got any kind of spiritual activity associated with them. Nobody has any idea. They're very strange, they're very spooky, they're really creepy things. If you just look for the Arthur's Seat coffins in the collections online, I think you can see them there. They're so spooky. Have you seen them? Des, they're really freaky, they're really weird. So here he is. The star of the show. He's got his mask on. Look, he's got his mask on. He's got his little crocheted coat to keep him warm. Good lad, good boy. Very good boy, isn't he? Who's a good boy? So this is Greyfriars Bobby. He was born on the 4th of May, 1855, and he died on the 14th of January, 1872. He's probably the most famous resident of Edinburgh, I would think, at this stage. He was a Skye Terrier. A lot of people think he was a West Highland Terrier. He wasn't. He was a Skye Terrier. And I am really ashamed that they tested Bobby last year and he tested positive for COVID-19. He genuinely did. So you're not allowed to touch this statue, okay? If you come up to Scotland this year, do not touch Greyfriars Bobby. So this statue, this drinking fountain was built after he died. It was built in the 1890s by a wealthy admirer. Can't remember which one. Baroness someone. Oh, here we go. Yeah, it was Baroness Burdett Coutts. Baroness Burdett Coutts built this drinking fountain as a token of affection to Bobby. So, shall we go in The Greyfriars Bobby, the pub's been here for about 350 years as well. Before that, there was a coffee house there, Mr. Trail's Coffee House. Supposedly, Bobby used to go in there to get food. Now there's a lot of stories about Greyfriars Bobby. There are all sorts of tales. We don't know which of them's true, if any of them's true, we just don't know. But the main story that was in the 1961 Disney film is Greyfriars Bobby was the dog of a man called John Grey, better known as Old Jock. And Old Jock died and was buried in Greyfriars Kirkyard. If it's Church of Scotland Church, it's a kirk. So it's Greyfriars Kirkyard. He was buried in there, and for 14 years afterwards, Bobby came and sat on his grave and guarded the grave. In 1867, William Chambers, that Chambers Street's named after, bought his licence so he wouldn't be taken away and killed or put down. So he bought a licence for Greyfriars Bobby, bought him a collar that's now in the National Museum to make sure Bobby would be happy and alive, fed him, watered him, and then finally in 1877 he was buried just here. So he wasn't buried in the kirkyard. You can't bury an animal in a kirkyard. It's against the rules. He's meant to be buried right here. So this, theoretically, according to the legend, is the last resting place of Greyfriars Bobby. But we go in, you'll see that inside the kirkyard, he's got his own little gravestone. There he is. Died 14th of January 1872, aged 16 years, bless him. And then it says, "Let his loyalty's devotion be a lesson to us all, erected by the Dog Aid Society." And if you look in front of it, what more could a doggy ask for than a dirty great pile of sticks? Bones, probably, you'd rather have, I would imagine. According to the cartoons, that's what dogs like. But there is a grain of truth to all of this. There was a man called Old Jock, and in the 1850s and 60s, graveyard dogs were very common in Edinburgh and around Scotland. So stray dogs in graveyards were very, very common sights in Scotland. Usually begging for scraps, living off the wild animals, the foxes and squirrels and that sort of thing. So there may very well have been a dog here, and there was a John Grey, known as Old Jock, who did attend Greyfriars Church at the right time. So there's an element of truth. It may be a true story, but we just don't know all of the facts. So be very careful on this ground, Des. We're just going to this little segment here. We've got a little patio just here. So here we've got John Grey, died 1858, Old Jock, master of Greyfriars Bobby, and even in his ashes, most beloved. And this is erected by American lovers of Bobby. So if there are American Bobby lovers out there, thank you very much indeed. And Old Jock has got a donation of some cash. That pound coin wasn't there earlier when I came on my rehearsal walk, so that's been donated today. All the money, by the way, is taken from here, and it's taken into the kirk, and it's donated to charities. Next door, we've got James Brown, died 1868, so during Bobby's lifetime, friend of Greyfriars Bobby. There you go. Now, no trip to Greyfriars would be complete without looking at a couple of the more grisly aspects of the place, so we're going to head back up. Now, Greyfriars Kirkyard was opened in 1562, so this is nearly 500 years old. It was opened because the city was running out of room to bury its dead. Edinburgh, 500 years ago, genuinely was a foul place to live. It was not a nice place. Tenement buildings, 7 stories high, with closes all around them, no indoor plumbing. There was a loch between what is now the old and new towns that was just used as a dumping ground, as Europe's largest outdoor sewer, some people claim. So they needed this burial ground. About 100 years after they opened it, a notorious man was buried here. A man by the name of George Mackenzie. He died in 1690. And George Mackenzie was what they call in Scotland a Lord Advocate. So he was basically a very high-powered judge or barrister. God, I can't see a bloody thing. and his mausoleum is just up here. Now, George Mackenzie is known as George Bloody Mackenzie. He's hated by a group of people called the Covenanters. Now, the Covenanters were a religious and political group in Scotland who formed in this kirkyard in 1638. And he had at least 300 of them imprisoned in this kirkyard after the Battle of Boswell Bridge in 1679, I think. Now this is his mausoleum. I don't know how well you'll be able to see it, Des, but I'll do what I can. This is the mausoleum of Lord Advocate George Mackenzie. It's absolutely spectacular. It's huge. Beautiful thing. Locked. You can't get in. Now in 2003, two teenage boys broke into here, stole a skull and started playing kickabout with the skull. Now, ever since then, people have reported weird things around here. So at least 50 people, 50 people, have reported seeing strange things here. But more than that, people have reported feeling weird things here. They feel a terrible sense of pressure. Looking through the windows, people say that they then feel sick. Several people have vomited on these stairs. People have been fainting. People have felt scratches over their bodies. That's a very common one. People say they feel scratches. Sometimes they appear the next day on their bodies. People have even felt bruising appearing around their necks as though they're being strangled. So this is a place that is desperately unpleasant to a lot of people. It feels a bit weird even looking through these grills into the mausoleum. You don't really want to. It doesn't seem right somehow. But that's Bloody Mackenzie's tomb, and the people that he imprisoned were imprisoned just around the corner here on a strip of wasteland. At the time, it was just a strip of wasteland. It's now called the Covenanters' Prison. It's been closed for a few years now. Unfortunately, people were going in here at night to use drugs and that sort of thing. But with special permission, you can go in. So here we are. This is the Covenanters' Prison, and it's difficult to see from here, but it's only about 100 feet from here to the end. 100 yards, I should say, about 100 metres. So it's not very big at all. It's locked here. And you can see that on the sides we've got symbols of death. Very common in older graveyards. We've got a scythe just here, the coffin, shovel, and spade, and then the coffin lift, the bier. It says here, look, the Covenanters' Prison. So nearly 400 people were imprisoned in here, and most of them died either of cold or of starvation. Some of them were beaten to death by the militia who were used as jailers, and it's a very unpleasant place. A lot of people feel very uncomfortable going in there. I can understand why. Lots of people. Graveyards aren't really a place where people die. They're normally a place where people rest. This is a place for very, very unpleasant conditions and death. With the order of the day for 300 men. It's very, very unpleasant in there. Just over there is the first school, sort of private school in Edinburgh. It was a hospital. It was a free school and a hospital. It's called Heriot's School. So if you've heard of Heriot Watt University, that's the Heriot that they're talking about. It's a 17th century school, I think. So that's Greyfriars Kirkyard. This is where we are right now. It's an absolutely spectacular place in the daytime. Lined with tombs. Scottish graveyards are always lined with tombs, but the ones in Greyfriars, they're just crazy big. Some of them are 20 feet tall. A lot of them are in a parlous condition. They really are in a terrible condition, but it's a fantastically historic church. Well, there's the castle. There's the castle. Can we get the castle? Can we see the castle from here?
Beautifully.
Oh, fabulous. Oh, look at that. Right, there's Edinburgh Castle. So the castle's always lit up. So that's where we're aiming for if we don't run out of time. Hope we don't run out of time. Got about 15 minutes. Can we make it to the castle? What do you think? Oh, we can make it to the castle, can't we?
Yeah.
If we zoom. Because there's a couple of bits I'd like to show people at the castle. But, we'll look at the Mortlocks and then we'll head out. Greyfriars is a fabulous church. It's absolutely covered in memorials on the outside as well. It's got loads of these gravestones on the outside, all these lovely 18th century gravestones. You must be very careful here though, because you can find human remains, teeth, finger bones, that sort of thing, on the surface of the ground. You must never touch them, not just because it's disrespectful and illegal, but also it's meant to be very, very bad luck to touch human remains that work their way up to the surface. Right, so what we're looking at here is a mort safe, or a mort lock. And this has been, it's made of iron, cast iron, and this has been put over somebody's grave to stop grave robbers from stealing the body. Now, up until the 1832 Anatomy Act, technically, you could take dead bodies and sell them to the medical schools of the UK. Edinburgh had a medical school, and so we do have mort locks in some of the graveyards in Edinburgh. Grave robbing was actually a really serious problem. It was technically not stealing because nobody owned a dead body. It's nobody's property, so you could take a dead body. As long as you didn't take anything else, none of the clothes or the grave goods. So obviously worried family members started putting iron safes around their relatives' bodies. And there's another one. I can't see, I've blinded myself with my own lantern. Hold it far away from me. There's another one just here. So who have we got here? We've got 1823. 1823, a widow. I can't quite make it out. Margaret Eads Bethune is buried here. So this is another one. It's more of a cage. And after 1832, the Anatomy Act meant you could only get a dead body if the family of the person who died gave you permission. So even if you donate your body to medical science, your family has to agree to you giving your body. Otherwise, it's illegal. And that put paid to most of the grave robbing in the UK. You get a nice view of Heriot's School from here, actually. So that's the school, Heriot's School, a very historic school. If you want to send your kids there, it's £18,000 a year, and they will not provide you with a uniform. Don't fall over, Des, careful. Sorry, I'll put the lantern down so you don't trip over. That's my fault, that is. So that's the mort safes. Those are mort safes. But like I say, we do have another route that's all about grave robbers, where we'll concentrate on that side of things. So if that's something that interests you, let us know. Love to live in one of these flats, wouldn't you? Backing onto the kirkyard. So this hut here, this isn't a sexton's hut. This is actually a guardhouse that was built in the 18th century to prevent people stealing dead bodies. So this was a watch house. This is actually a watch house to stop people stealing bodies. The Murder Act of, I think, the 1750s meant that if you were accused of murder and convicted, you would be hanged, and then your body would be either strung up on public display or donated to medical science. But not enough people were being executed for murder, so they needed to find more dead bodies, and that's why grave robbing started to appear as a business model, you see. Gig economy. Right, let's run up to the castle. Run up to the castle. It's not the Rona, I'm just very unfit. Right, I think I can turn this off now. Oh, hey! Ah, we're back out in the refreshing sunlight. How lovely. How lovely. Ah. So there we go, go past Bobby Dog. Past Bobby Dog, there he is. Past the shawarma falafel shop. Single glove on the floor. Single shoes on the floor. They always freak me out. Just one shoe. You think you'd notice, wouldn't you? I'd notice if I lost a single shoe. I'd wonder where it had gone. So that's Greyfriars Kirkyard. It's meant to be the single most haunted kirkyard in the world. More people report seeing and feeling supernatural entities there than any other graveyard on the planet, and that's true. I find it very comforting in there. I find it a very peaceful place. I love going in there during the day or at night. I think it's absolutely lovely. It's very serene. But a lot of people go in there and suddenly feel very oppressed. They feel they feel that they're not welcome in there. So I'm not sure what that means. That probably means something. There's probably a deeper psychological or supernatural meaning to that I haven't got a clue about, but there you go. There is more of Greyfriars over there. You can see the tombs lining the kirkyard. There's a little sticky up thing just there. That's one of the tombs. Another one is there. So there's lots of graves and lots of tombs there. More than 10,000 bodies buried in Greyfriars. It was the graveyard for the city, for the borough of Edinburgh. But of course the Canongate Kirk was the churchyard for down the other end of the Royal Mile. So you can see the scale of this place. Very, very small. Very, very small. In the space of less than a mile, you've got two big graveyards, or three big graveyards, at least 3 market crosses, churches, and the High Kirk, and a palace, all within that little cramped area. So if there's anybody out from North America watching, that's probably an amazing scale for you, where you can walk or drive, I suppose, 30, 40, 50, 100 miles and not get to the next town, whereas in Edinburgh, you walk down the high street for 15 minutes and all of a sudden you're in a different parish. You've got to pay a toll to sell your goods there. So this is the National Library of Scotland. It's a fantastic place. And on the left is the City Library, and this is actually a Carnegie Library. So if you've heard of Andrew Carnegie, born in Dunfermline, made his millions in the steel and oil trade over in the USA, became the richest man in the world. Carnegie Hall and all that sort of thing. He built a network of libraries all over the world. In Australia and New Zealand and Britain and America and Canada and Africa. And Edinburgh City Library is a Carnegie Library. There's a bust to Andrew Carnegie inside the library. There we go. So we're going to quickly head up Castle Hill. We might go a couple of minutes over. So if you need to leave and have your tea, have your dinner, feel free. I do hope you're enjoying it so far. It is of course, it's free to attend, as all of our events are. If you want to pay what you feel, sling me a pint's worth in the PayPal. I know that the team over at Deathly HQ have been putting the link in. I live in a refrigerator box underneath a railway arch, so I don't have access to the internet normally. But they've given me special permission tonight to stand fairly close to the camera. I'm not allowed to touch it, or sniff it, or lick it. No tasting. But I am allowed to talk at you, so that's fine. Here we go. This is the Lawn Market. There's all sorts of stories about why it's called the Lawn Market, but one of the stories is it's the land market, and it was then corrupted to the Lawn Market, which was then corrupted to the Lawn Market. But the truth of it is, they used to sell lawn here, fine linen and cotton. It was used to make shirts and handkerchiefs. And this is where they sold it. So this was the Lawn Market, the linen market, effectively, for the city of Edinburgh. It's no more complicated than that, quite frankly. But there we go. We love a story, don't we? We love a story. So we're very much climbing up a hill now. This is Castle Hill. So the Edinburgh Castle's been here for centuries. It's been here. There's been some kind of presence, human presence, on top of this hill since the Bronze Age. So at least 3,000 years people have been on this hill, here, fortifying it. And the castle's meant to have a bit of a ghostly past. There's a headless drummer boy. Bless him, there's a little boy who had his head shot off with a cannonball by the forces of Oliver Cromwell in 1650, I think. And whenever Scotland is threatened by invasion, he is seen on the walls looking out to sea, drumming the reveille. So drumming the reveille to get the troops out of bed. He's seen drumming. The last time he was seen drumming was the Cuban Missile Crisis. No joke. Last time that boy was seen was the Cuban Missile Crisis, which I think is really quite frightening. So here we go. We're climbing up Castle Hill. There you go, Castle Hill. Like I said, we're still on the Royal Mile. High Street, Castle Hill and Canongate. We're very, very near to the top. We're very near the end. We've nearly done it. Hooray! Oh, I could do the pint now. So this was where at least 1,000 people, 1,000 people were executed for witchcraft in the 16th and 17th centuries. Now, witchcraft's not illegal in the UK anymore. I mean, now that Brexit's happened, it's anybody's guess, but But it is technically still illegal to make a profit from witchcraft, to claim that you have supernatural powers and make a profit from it if you don't have supernatural powers. Still technically a criminal offence. Hasn't been prosecuted since World War II. Oh, Skinner's close. Careful, Skinner's close. And we know what Skinner's like. So where we are here is a very, very fancy hotel and restaurant called the Witchery by the castle. And it's haunted by one of the people executed for witchcraft. They say it's a fancy hotel now. It's a beautiful hotel, beautiful restaurant. Very, 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 very posh. But they say that it's a beautiful woman. It's not it's a beautiful woman with long black hair, like my mother. And she'll stand at the end of your bed and she'll gaze at you, wearing a diaphanous silk negligee. Not like my mother. Wearing a cozies, a comfies, nice dressing gown, that sort of thing. And she'll just look at you. And then when you blink, she'll vanish. That's it then. So that is supposedly one of the witches. So she sounds like she was a witch, doesn't she? She sounds like she did have magical powers. When I say witch, I just mean somebody that uses magic. Most of these people, mostly women, were local healers, hedge witches, people who could work herbalism and had knowledge of herbs and vegetables and natural remedies that people thought was magic, and some people, still consider magic. And some of them, perhaps, had more supernatural ability, but we don't know. But there is a memorial to them on this flat little building here. This funny little building here is now a tartan weaving mill. You can buy lots of overpriced woolen fabric. But this is actually the reservoir, Castle Hill Reservoir. It's not a reservoir anymore, but it was built as a reservoir for this bit of the city, so for this top part of the city. There's been a reservoir here since the 1620s, and in 1912, it was decided... I'll get my lantern on for this. No, don't flash. It's against the law. It was decided to build this lovely plaque here. It was actually made in the 1890s and put up in 1912. You see, we've got an angry face. There we go. Yeah, we've got an angry face there. We've got a snack. And we've got a happy, serene face. I'm just going to read you what it says. It says, "This fountain, designed by John Duncan, Royal Society of Arts, is near the site on which many witches were burned at the stake. The wicked head and the serene head signify that some used their exceptional knowledge for evil purposes, while others were misunderstood and wished their kind nothing but good. The serpent has the dual significance of evil and of wisdom. The foxglove spray further emphasises the dual purpose of many common objects, because, of course, foxgloves, very bad for you if you eat them, but also have been used in herbal medicine for many, many years. So there you go. That is the Witch's Well. It is a drinking fountain. It's a fountain. You see, we've got the plumbing just here, and there's a drain. It's not working anymore. It doesn't work anymore. It's got this lovely Art Nouveau design. But that is the Witch's Well. Hardly anybody knows about this. Nobody really knows that this is here. But now you know about it, and you can tell people it's here when you come to Edinburgh Castle, because we have reached it. Here we are, boys and girls. This is it. This is where we're going to finish for the night. Bang on time as well. Struth. So welcome to Edinburgh Castle. Now there's meant to be the Phantom Piper that lives in there as well. Pipe Major was sent down a newly discovered tunnel from the castle kitchens that's meant to go all the way down to Holyrood Palace, down the bottom of the Royal Mile. So there's meant to be a secret tunnel. And he went down there and played his bagpipes so that they could trace the route of the tunnel from above ground. After he got about halfway down, which is about half a mile, the music suddenly stopped and he was never seen or heard from again. And they actually blocked the tunnel up. Nobody's been down there since. But here we are. Let's go and knock on the door, see if we can get a cup of tea to end the tour with. So if you come here in the daytime, you get an absolutely panoramic view. You can see all the way over to the Firth of Forth, to Fife, over that way. That's north, over that way. Over there, so that's north over to Fife. And then there's south, there's Heriot School that we saw earlier on. big lit up school there. Now, this whole area here was used for troop mustering and exercises. The castle's actually a barracks. Still technically is an army barracks. But it's mostly a tourist site now. It's closed, of course, but knock on the door, see if we can get a cup of tea. I really love that they light that building up in red and green. That's the Camera Obscura. So it's basically that tower. When you go in, at the bottom of the tower, there's a big mirror. If you look at it, you get a view, 360 view of Edinburgh from the top of the tower. And that was effectively like high-tech Google Street View technology in the 1800s. It's still good fun. I think it's still pretty cool. This castle's a long way away, isn't it? I give up. Oh yeah, did he have digon? I've had enough. And there it is. We've got Nemo me impune lacessit above the door, and a lion rampant gules with a thingy around it, a border around it. Parent will know what that's called. So nobody insults me without redress. So here we go, boys and girls. We'll knock on the door and have a cup of tea. There's nobody in. Damn. Well, there's nobody in the castle, so it looks like we're going to just have to go back to Deathly HQ. But there we go. That'll do us, I think, for tonight. We've made it. We've done the entire Royal Mile, and we've done Greyfriars Kirkyard, and we had some trouble banter for our first ever tour in Edinburgh. So that was fabulous. Well done, boys and girls. I do apologise if you heard any of Jordan's strong language. I tried to make sure he didn't do too much. So if you're out there somewhere, Jordan, thank you for being a colossal pain in the bum. Thank you ever so much, Desdemona Deathly, for being our wonderful camera operator. Thank you, everybody who attended. How many people have we had tonight, Desdemona? How many have we got at the minute?
At least 1.1 thousand current.
Good God, I'm going to have a stiff drink. I need a stiff drink for that. So thank you very much, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed it. We will be doing more of these now that we know that we can do them successfully without our camera tanking. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled on the page. I know you all will. Thank you to all of the Deathly family for joining in. And it's time for a nice cup of tea, don't you? Splendid. So yeah, there you go. Thank you very much, boys and girls. If you want to chuck anything our way on the PayPal, feel free to. And I will sign off for now. Mwah! Hwyl fawr, goodbye for now.